Noor Sign Books presents Ramadan Miracles, Stories of Faith Found in the Ordinary. The Boy Who Counted Mosques, Part 3, The Mosque of Fathers. Dakar, Day 25 of Ramadan. Moussa's bicycle chain snaps on a dusty road in Yoff. He has visited 190 mosques searching for his father's face. But tonight, with the adhan rising and a broken chain dragging behind him, he's about to learn that the search itself was the answer.
Day 25. The bicycle chain snapped. Not slipped this time. Not rattled. Broke. A clean snap. The metal separating like a severed thread, dropping into the sand with a sound like a whispered curse. Moussa coasted to a stop on a sandy road in Yoff and stood over the bicycle, breathing hard. He had been cycling too hard, the way he always cycled in the last week of Ramadan, as if the end of the month were a cliff and he had to reach the other side before the ground gave way. His legs were iron, his hands were calloused, his notebook was nearly full. 190 mosques, each one a circle on his wall map, each one a place where his father was not. He knelt, tried to fix it. The links would not join. No tools, no spare chain, nothing but a notebook full of absences and a body running on 16 hours of fasting. He sat on the curb. The sky above Yoff was enormous, the Atlantic sky, with nothing between it and the Americas except 3,000 miles of open water. It was turning purple and gold, the colors bleeding like watercolors on wet paper. The adhan rose from a dozen mosques, high and low, near and far, overlapping into a single shimmering sound that seemed to come from the sky itself. Moussa did not pray. He sat on the curb with his broken bicycle and his full notebook and his empty stomach, and he wept. Not the silent tears on the beach with Papa Omar. These were loud, wrenching sobs, the kind that come from the basement of the soul, where the foundation has been crumbling for 8 years, and finally, on a sandy road in Yoff at sunset, on the 25th night of Ramadan, the whole structure gives way. He cried for his father who had left. He cried for his mother who had stayed. He cried for the 190 mosques that had not contained the one face he was searching for. He cried for the bicycle that was broken, and for himself, a 12-year-old boy sitting alone on a curb with sand in his shoes and God's name in the air, and no one to take him home. The zikr circle was gathering nearby. Their voices rose. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. The words moved through him like the ocean through sand, slow, relentless, reshaping everything they touched. And when the tears finally stopped, he felt hollow, not empty but cleared, as if the crying had swept something out of him that had been occupying too much space. He picked up his bicycle. He walked it home. The broken chain dragged in the dust behind him like a tail. It took 2 hours.
He did not ride on day 26. He stayed home. He sat on his bed and looked at his wall map, the constellation of circles and lines that covered the entire newsprint surface. 190 mosques, each one a place he had been, a prayer he had prayed, a face he had searched and not found. He had drawn this map to find his father. He had filled it with strangers. He picked up his pencil and added one more entry to his notebook, even though he had not gone anywhere. Day 26. Home. No mosque. Mama and I broke our fast together at sunset. Dibu dien with extra fish. She sat with me while I ate. She didn't ask. I think I am almost ready to tell her. He put the pencil down. He looked at the wall. And for the first time, he did not trace a route to the next mosque. He simply sat. Something was almost ready inside him, the way the dawn is almost ready in the last hour of the night. Day 27. Laylat al-Qadr. The night of power. The night when the al-Qur'an was first revealed. When the heavens open and the angels descend. And every prayer whispered into the dark is worth more than 1,000 months of praying. The 27th night of Ramadan. though no one can be certain which night is the real one, is the one the city chooses, collectively, as the night to pour everything out. Moussa fixed his bicycle chain. It took an hour, with pliers borrowed from the neighbor. The repair was ugly. A twisted link, a knot of wire. But it held. He put on his one good pair of sandals, the ones he saved for Eid al-Fitr. Tonight felt like it needed them. His mother was at the door. "Where are you going?" "To pray," he said. And then, because something in his chest was finally, painfully open, "I'll be home before midnight, I promise." She looked at him for a long time. Then, "Take dates." She pressed a small bag of medjool dates into his hand. "And Moussa?" "Yes, Mama?" "Come home." He nodded. He rode. For the first time in 27 nights, he was not cycling towards a specific mosque. He was riding without a map, without a plan, letting the road take him where it wanted. The city was alive with prayer. Dhikr circles on corners, al-Qur'an spilling from open doors, families walking to mosques in their best clothes. The air was thick with oud and incense, and the salt of the sea, and the sky was clear and black and scattered with stars. He kept going, past Gueltape, past Yoff, past the fishing village, past the last of the houses, onto a narrow dirt road that wound through low scrub and baobab trees. I remembered Papa Omar mentioning a mosque out here, for the fishermen who go out before dawn, and had filed it away without meaning to. And then he saw it. A mosque, small, whitewashed, almost invisible behind a thicket of baobab and scrub. No minaret, no dome, no sign. The walls were old, scoured by ocean wind to a soft, chalky gray. A single light burned above the door. Moussa parked his bicycle. He took off his sandals. He stood at the entrance, and for a moment, just a moment, considered turning back. Then he went in.
The prayer hall was the size of a large room. Simple woven carpet, bare walls, except for a small wooden shelf with a Quran and a framed calligraphy. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. Maybe 30 men inside, seated in rows, waiting. The air smelled of clean cotton and sand and something Moussa could not name, something that made his chest tighten. He sat near the back. He put his notebook on the shelf. He looked at the men around him, and for the first time did not search their faces for his father. He simply looked. The Imam entered. He was old, older than Ibrahima, older than Papa Omar. His face was the color of dark honey, deeply lined, with a white beard that fell to his chest. He walked slowly, one hand trailing along the wall. His eyes were open but unseeing, clouded, milky, the eyes of a man who had been blind for a long time and had learned to see in other ways. He reached the front and turned to face the congregation. He could not see them, but he smiled, the smile of a man who knows exactly who is in the room. "Tonight is Laylat al-Qadr," he said. His voice was quiet but carried, like a stone dropped into still water. "Tonight, the heavens are open. Whatever you are carrying, set it down. Whatever you are running from, stop. Whatever you are searching for, let it find you." Moussa's hands trembled. He pressed them flat on his knees. The Imam raised his hands. The prayer began. He recited Surat an-Nur, the chapter of light. Moussa knew it. He had heard it in 100 mosques. But he had never heard it like this. The blind Imam's voice was rough, textured, like driftwood or old cloth. It carried something polished voices did not: weight, gravity, the sound of a man who had lived inside these verses for 60 years. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. The verse described a niche, a lamp inside the niche, a fire inside the lamp, and the fire was light upon light, and God guided to his light whom he willed. And Moussa, sitting on the carpet in a whitewashed mosque at the edge of the world, fasting, 12 years old, notebook on the shelf beside him, saw the light, not with his eyes, with something deeper. It came in a rush, like the tears on the beach with Papa Omar, but this was not sadness. This was seeing. He saw his father's face, not as he had imagined it for 8 years, not the idealized father from the shrine in his heart, but a real face, a tired face, a man who had left because he was broken and did not know how to stay. He saw his mother's hands, the hands that sewed and cooked and held his face every morning, and understood, suddenly, that she had carried the same wound he had, only she had carried it longer and heavier and without a bicycle. He saw Imam Ibrahima reteaching wudu under a mango tree, Uncle Mustafa not looking, adding dates, Papa Omar tapping his chest, 198 mosques, each one a room where strangers had fed him and prayed beside him and touched his head. And he understood, not intellectually, but with the deep, wordless understanding of a child who has finally stopped running, that these men were not strangers. They were the answer. The dua he had been making for 8 years, let me find Baba, let me have a father, let me not be the boy whose father left, had not been answered with one man. It had been answered with a city. He sank to the floor. He pressed his forehead to the carpet. It was rough and smelled of sand and prayer, and he wept. Not the angry tears of day 25. These were something else. Release, gratitude, grief, all of it tangled together like the roots of a baobab tree, deep and spreading and impossible to pull up. The prayer ended. Men began their personal supplications, murmurs rising like heat. Moussa stayed on the floor. He could not move. The weight of 8 years was leaving his body through his eyes, and he had to let it go. A hand found his head. The blind Imam had walked, without eyes, without sight, through the rows of seated men, directly to where Moussa knelt. His hand was dry and warm, resting on Moussa's head with the gentleness of a man who knows exactly what a broken boy looks like, even without seeing. "You have been walking a very long way, son," the Imam said, his voice low, just for them. "Did you find what you were searching for?" Moussa shook his head, then remembered. The Imam could not see. "No, uncle," he whispered. "I did not find him. My Baba." The Imam nodded slowly. "There was a man once," he said, "years ago. He came here every night for a week. He told me he was looking for God in the wind, in the distance, anywhere but where he was. I told him God was already in his home, in the face of his son. He cried, and then he left for the port to work the international ships. He hasn't been back." Moussa's throat tightened. "Uncle, did he give you his name?" The Imam shook his head. "He told me only that he came from Medina and that he had a young son whose face he could no longer see in his mind. He did not say his name. Perhaps he was ashamed, or perhaps he knew that names matter less in prayer than they do on earth. Medina, a son. It could be anyone. It could be no one." The Imam smiled. Moussa could hear it in his voice. "But you have been found, haven't you?" Moussa sobbed. The Imam's hand did not move. It stayed on his head, steady, patient, the way God's mercy stays, not fixing, not explaining, just being there, until the crying slowed and the breathing deepened, and the boy finally lifted his face from the carpet. The Imam fed him dates and milk from a small room behind the prayer hall. They ate in silence. The Imam's blind eyes were closed, his lips moving in the dhikr. Moussa chewed and looked at the old man's face and thought, this is what it would feel like. Not Baba, but father.
He rode home. The chain held. The stars were out, and the city was quiet the way it gets after midnight during Ramadan, not sleeping but resting, the way a man rests between prostrations. He walked through the door and found his mother at the kitchen table, awake, a cup of tea cooling in front of her. She looked at him. He was sand-covered, tear-streaked, and luminous. He sat down. He put his notebook on the table between them, and he told her everything. The map, the wall map, the mission, the 198 mosques, Imam Ibrahima and the wudu lesson, Uncle Mustafa, who fed him without asking, Papa Omar, who broke him open with truth, the blind Imam, Suratun Nur, the hand on his head, the words, "You have been found, haven't you?" Aminata listened. She did not interrupt. When he finished, the silence between them was the deepest silence of his life, not empty, but full, the way a cup is full, the way a prayer is full. Then she said, "I need to tell you something I have never told you." She folded her hands on the table. "Your father did not leave because he didn't love us. He left because his own spirit was restless. He followed shuyukh. He traveled to Marabit in the interior. He listened to voices that told him God was somewhere else, always somewhere else, and he went looking, not because we weren't enough, because he wasn't enough inside. He had a hole that no wife and no child could fill." Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady, the voice of a woman who has held this sentence inside for 8 years and rehearsed it at midnight over and over until it was smooth enough to say without breaking. "I told you he went to find God because I didn't know how to say he went to find himself, and by the time I understood the difference, you had already built your map." She reached across the table and opened the notebook. She turned the pages slowly, page after page of entries, each one a mosque, a name, a date, a detail, 198 pages of a boy's search for a man who was not there. "You have been looking for him with your bicycle," she said. "I have been looking for him in my prayers." She looked up, and her smile was the saddest, most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Maybe we both found something better. You found fathers in the city, Moussa, and I found a son who loves God enough to ride across the world for him." He put his head on the table. She put her hand on his head, the same spot the blind Imam had touched. They stayed like that, mother and son, in the kitchen of their small apartment in Medina, while the last hours of Ramadan bled away and the sky outside began slowly to lighten.
Eid morning. The takbirs were already rising. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, from every mosque in the city, layering over each other like the adhans, like the voices of 1,000 fathers calling their children to prayer. Moussa woke with the sun. He washed. He put on his white bubu, the one his mother had sewn, smelling of new cotton and her perfume. He did not open his notebook. He did not look at his wall map. He rode his bicycle through the streets of Medina, past shops draped in green and gold, past children in new clothes throwing sweets, past the mosques, all of them, their doors open wide, their courtyards full. He rode to the Mosque de la Paix in Grand Dakar, where the mango tree shaded the courtyard and the sandals were lined up against the wall. Imam Ibrahima was performing wudu at the tap. He looked up, and his walnut-creased face broke into the smile Moussa had been carrying in his chest for 27 nights. "Little brother, Eid Mubarak." "Eid Mubarak, uncle." They prayed together. The mosque was full, 40 men, maybe 50, all neighbors. The Imam's recitation was slow and clear, each verse a stone dropped into still water. Moussa prayed with his hands open, his eyes closed, and his heart, for the first time in 8 years, not searching for anything. After the prayer, the men embraced. "Taqabbal Allahu minna wa minkum." May God accept from us and from you. They kissed cheeks. They laughed. Imam Ibrahima placed both hands on Moussa's shoulders. "So," he said, "still counting?" Moussa shook his head. I stopped. The Imam's eyes were bright. "Good. Now you can start praying." They laughed together. The men around them were laughing, and the takbirs were rising, and the sun was climbing, and the city was full of fathers and sons and mosques and food and God, everywhere, in every room, in every hand that had fed him, and every voice that had called him home. He rode home. He ate with his mother, Thibu Dian with extra fish, on the small scarred table that had held so much silence. They ate from the same platter, Senegalese style, and his mother's fingers were quick and neat and stained with tomato, and Moussa watched them and thought, "These hands, these are the first hands I ever knew." After lunch, he went to his room. He stood before the wall map, the newsprint, the circles, the lines, the 198 mosques of Dakar spread out like a galaxy. He looked at it for a long time. Then he took it down carefully, folding it, and put it in his drawer. He sat at the table with fresh paper and his pencil, but he did not draw a map. He drew a tree, a baobab, the great, ancient, upside-down tree of Senegal, its roots spreading wide and deep, its branches reaching up like arms in prayer. From its roots, he drew dozens of tiny branches, and at the end of each, a small mosque, the green dome of Wakam, the mango tree of Mosque de la Paix, the tin roof of the Yoff Mosque, the chandeliers of the Grande Mosque. And inside each tiny mosque, a man, not his father, but one of the men who had fed him, taught him, touched his head, or simply stood beside him in prayer. Imam Ibrahima, Uncle Mustafa, Papa Omar, the blind Imam, the young Imam with the cracking voice, the woman with kind eyes, the boy who gave him his seat, dozens of them, a constellation of fathers scattered across a city, found during Ramadan. He labeled the drawing in careful letters, Mon Mosque de Pères, my mosque of fathers. He brought it to the kitchen and held it up. His mother studied it for a long time, the tree, the mosques, the tiny men inside them. "Where shall I put it?" she asked. "Wherever you want." She pinned it to the refrigerator with a cheap green magnet. The drawing hung there, slightly crooked. She adjusted it once, then stepped back. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's not a map," Moussa said. "No," she said, "it's better." That evening, as the sun set on the first day of Eid al-Fitr, Moussa sat in the courtyard with a glass of bisap juice. He was not on his bicycle, he was not counting. He was sitting, and the sitting felt like a prayer. He thought about his father, not with the ache, the hook in his chest that Papa Omar had named. The hook was still there. He suspected it would always be there, the way a healed bone still aches in the rain. But it was no longer the defining thing. It was one note in a larger music, one mosque in a larger city. He thought about his father's words, "You have been found, haven't you?" He drank his bisap. The juice was sweet and tart, the color of rubies.
The Fajr Adhan would come again in the morning, the same cracked megaphone, the same overlapping voices, the same ancient call. But Moussa would not be awake with a notebook. He would be awake with open hands, making dua, not for his father, but for the men who found him, and for the mother who held the family together, and for the God who answers prayers you didn't know you were making. Outside, the takbirs rose over Dakar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The boy who counted mosques sat in the courtyard and listened, and the listening was its own kind of map, not of places, but of the invisible lines that connect a child's broken heart to the hands that mend it. One prayer, one date, one mosque at a time.
You've been listening to Ramadan Miracles, a Noor Sign Books original. And so, Moussa's journey comes to an end, not in finding the father he searched for, but in discovering a city full of fathers who had been there all along. The boy who counted mosques learned that sometimes the greatest answer to prayer isn't the one we seek, but the one that finds us riding home on a broken bicycle, with a heart full of light and a map no longer needed. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next miracle. Visit noorsignbooks.com to join our community and get the full collection. Jazakallah khairan.